Welcome to another wonderful episode of Success Innovation. Today's topic, future of remote work and hybrid office. We start off with a couple minutes before the topic, giving advice to one of our attendees. Let's get started.
Startup. Just because the startup is really fun, you'll learn a lot of things, but at the same time, it is unstable. So I'd be concerned about job security. That would be my first thing. And also housing. I don't know if you have friends or family up in LA. You should probably get that going and just have in mind how bad traffic is in LA. So like have a happy medium where like yeah, it's more affordable, but also am I willing to do this commute every day or however many days you're in the office?
For sure. Thank you for that advice.
Yeah, one of the other things that I would like to advise you is, since you have a couple, if you're not hurting for money and you have a couple months to go ahead and literally spend for yourself. We can see Mr. Mike Cruz, and I can see he's got his biking jersey. I'm assuming he literally just came back or is about to go and embark in a bike ride, a static bike ride, or outside bike ride. But at the same time, you're not going to have this freedom per se of doing and going wherever you like for as long as you like in a very, very long time. So, what I'm trying to say is if you have a trip or if you have the idea of taking maybe a month hike or maybe a quote unquote sabbatical, now is the time to actually do it. If you don't have to spend a lot of money, but I would advise you to at least consider that, right? If you can push the start date to, let's say, sometime in September, and that'll give you at least a month to relax, recharge, focus on yourself, and go hard at it. That's my advice to you. I didn't really have the opportunity to do it, and this is more mental health aspect because you will not have this in a long, long time. So just be aware of that. Lourdes, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I forgot about that. So when I graduated, I did in December, like halfway through December, and then I started my job like January, and I had no time to like recalibrate, take a break or whatever. But I was also like kind of broke, so I had to go back into work. So I don't know what your circumstances, but if you do have some money and some freedom, take a road trip, visit some friends. It'll be a nice trip.
And now, I'm not saying spend $5,000 on this trip. I'm saying if you can do a road trip to Colorado or the Grand Canyon and spend maybe a couple $100s here and there, you can camp out in your car if you want to, right? But you can spend about $500 to $1,000, and even if you don't have that money right now, I'm pretty sure that if you talk to somebody, talk to me, talk to Mr. Mike Cruz, either we'll give you some money or we'll lend you some money, and then you can just go ahead and do that. That's my personal take on this matter, and this is real. Why? Because you've been studying for 4 or 5 years, right? You nonstop. You literally have had no summers off. You're going into this new job phase, and it's going to be a seamless transition. So your mind is not going to have a break. Your body's not going to have a break. And eventually, as Lourdes said, it wears you down. And you need to have that little bit of a downtime, refocus, process everything that has happened. You just graduated, but you've been focusing more on job hunting than not. And now it's time for you, Victor, to figure out this is Victor. This is the transition point. This is where I'm going. This is a new phase. So that's my advice. Mr. Mike Cruz, any thoughts?
I always have thoughts. Yeah, Victor. Yeah, I'm just thinking, how much time do you think you have between end of school and your new job?
Well, well, I don't know if I'll have the job yet, but I mean, I'm hoping to get something maybe by like September.
Okay.
So I guess how much is that? 2 months?
Yep. Yep. So you're still job searching.
Yes, that's correct.
So I think between now and then, uh, my thinking would be to spend a little time on researching the companies that you want to work for. I mean, so you feel comfortable when you make the decision. And then when you do make the decision, you'll know something about the company, what you're getting into, and some of the, like Lorda says, where is it and what are the mechanics of holding that job. And then after that, then you can negotiate start time. Hopefully you can negotiate start time. And if they can give you a month or two, then that's a time to kind of, rethink your life. Here I'm going to go work here, but will I work here forever? Those are some of the decisions that a lot of people don't make right off the bat. They say, I'm sure a lot of this would say, I need to get a job because I need some money and I need to work. And you jump into it. And then you start to think about, wow, was this really a good decision? For how long? Because most people now, most young people like yourself, and I think Lodge will agree, your time frame for a job at any company now is between the 3 to 5 years. Because for me, it was a lifetime job. Once I got in there, I knew what the structure was, and I wanted to climb the ladder. So uh, do some simple forecasting for yourself. Most I didn't do any forecasting until I was in my mid 40s. I had a 5 or 10 year plan about where I wanted to be, who I wanted to be, et cetera, et cetera. In your downtime, you might want to think about your next 3 to 5 years, and then just kind of forecast 5 to 10 years. Do you want to get married? Do you want to get settled down? Do you want to travel? In your job, do you want to continue on with the advanced degree? And in what? Because a lot of engineers now today, they go into environmental, or they go into management, or they go into something that's consistent with engineering, but uh, puts a little flavor into the job search that they're doing. So you have that time, and that's time to think about how you want to do what you want to do, especially academics, and then in your work in technology. Do you want to work with people? Do you want to just or hardware work, software work? Get into computers or whatever, or do you want to work with people and make this a better world? All those things will come across your mind sooner or later, you know. And so now's the kind of time to get a little bit of think about that, and research on the job. And then if you can take some time between that and your start date, I would spend a little time on researching about what you want to do, 3 to 5 year plan, and then go enjoy yourself. Yeah, I would suggest get a bicycle, because I was in Florida, and I met a student that was from the Tallahassee, University of Florida, whatever. I met him on the road. He says, "Yeah, I'm taking a break. I'm riding from there down to Key West. 3 to 5 days." And he was sleeping he was sleep. He was out camping. He was sleeping in the bushes. And I said, "You know what? I had a hotel room." So I says, I'm 2 nights here. Spend a night with me. Da 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 da. And we just chatted. But I met people on the road bicycling just for a day or two, or a weekend. I mean, you can take off from wherever you are and spend 2 or 3 days, head either way. Go about, because along the California coast, there's hiking and biking camps all along the coast. And if you research out a little bit, you don't have to pay hardly anything. Maybe $10 or $15 for a campsite, and it has a shower, and then you plan your day. But it's relaxing. You get on the bike, you can't think about anything else except riding, and it will clear your mind, because you got to watch out for the cars
And
and
the
the deer
bugs,
and all that stuff.
and the bugs, and the
And
bugs.
I had one guy that was out there, and the mosquitoes ate him alive.
Oh,
But that was out in Montana. That
yeah,
was in bug country. But
yeah.
if you're in Southern California, you're good. So yeah, I mean, pick something that will give you a little physical exercise, give you a little mind exercise, and cycling is one way to do it.
Awesome. Thank you. Hopefully that gives you a little insight, perspective, some food for thought, right? You don't have to do what we say. Just it's just our advice and our experience and lack thereof, and something that we wish we would have done when we were younger. So it's just for you to think about. So hopefully that gives you some ideas. So thank you for joining Cafecito Chats. Today's topic: future of remote work and hybrid offices. Do we still see that hybrid work is still sustainable in 2025, or is there a shift back into the office happening, right? What tools or practices have improved productivity and work-life balance over the last couple of years? And how has remote work changed local economies and social connections? So that is the topic for today's conversation. During COVID, everybody was working from home. Whether you liked it or not, a lot of corporations decided and had to pivot and shift, but there were still essential workers, physical work that you couldn't do remotely. So those were called essential workers. So you literally had to go back into the office and make sure that you actually had personnel there. But a lot of the individuals that work in office, a lot of us here, probably experience a little bit of the remote from home work type of environment. And I want to hear your perspective. And I see Omar Hernandez. And Omar Hernandez, thank you for joining. What are your thoughts? Is hybrid work still sustainable, or are we seeing a bigger shift back into the office taking place at this moment? Omar?
Hey, Lázaro, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me. I think it's still, hybrid work is still gonna be here to stay. It may shift back and forth depending on program needs and whatnot, but I think it's a nice balance to have. Of course, making in-person meetings, and then taking all your other meetings at home when you can. So I think it's here to stay. It's definitely shifted more towards being in the office. But we'll see what the rest of the year has in store.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Omar, for sharing that. And I want to hear your personal take. You do a lot of remote work, and you are flexible in that regard. But I want to get your perspective on what benefits and maybe what drawbacks does working from home have for you?
So benefits, I would say, is the flexibility of being able to come into the office a little bit later, not at exactly set times. Being able to run some errands either early in the morning or in the afternoon. And I think downsides would be just trying to navigate, the trying to get into the office, making sure I'll be in by a specific time. And another benefit I would say is not having to deal with as much traffic as normal office worker would have to deal with.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Omar. Mindy, you work in a lab. I'm assuming that it is mandatory for a lot of lab personnel to actually be on site, but I want to get your perspective. And also, during COVID, was the lab personnel actually working from home remotely, or were you required to be in person on site? Mindy?
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and
Good.
clear.
So I'll give a little bit because my husband actually works from home pretty much 95% of the time. So I can give a little context there. I also worked in a skiff, which was during COVID, which was 100% of the time. And now I have a hybrid schedule. So I've kind of seen the full spectrum of this and the pros and the cons. My role in the lab currently is primarily in office, but we do have a lot of flexibility, and a lot of our meetings are still virtual because the size of our campus is fairly large. So even some of our meetings are still virtual, even if we're all on site, just because getting across the campus and booking conference rooms across a large campus can be a bit of a challenge. So we still host several virtual meetings. There is definitely a push to get more in person, especially depending on your role. And so if you're doing lab work, doing testing and hardware, you're pretty much going to have to be in. If you're doing some designing aspects, there's flexibility to do some of that from home. I'm very fortunate in the fact that my group is very flexible. So I have young kids who go to school, and any parent who knows is a school schedule is not the most optimum alignment to a work schedule. And so a lot of times I'll work for 1 or 2 hours in the morning, come physically into the office, and then be able to go pick up my kids. And so I might have like 2 hours of my day that might be remote work, whereas the rest of the day I might be on site. So there's a lot of flexibility. And in the lab environment, we're still seeing a large want for that flexibility. I know that might not necessarily be reflected outside of that area. Because when I worked for Ball Aerospace, which is BAE now, a lot of their work in the New Mexico office specifically was skiff work. So for those of you who know what a skiff is, it's basically a vault-like room, lots of control access, no phones, no windows, very controlled facility. And so there is no way to do that work outside of that physical building. So we were considered essential personnel, and how we had to handle that through COVID was kind of basically doing shifts and separating bodies throughout the day to still make progress on all of our tasking that we had to do for the country. And so that type of environment, it was very lab focused, very manufacturing focused, design to manufacturing, rapid prototyping, very much required in the office support. My role now, which is, right, we're not going to see a nuclear weapon for about 10 years, right? There's a little bit of flexibility in terms of how long things take, but still more in the office. Funny enough, my husband works for the production agency for my company. So I design it, he gets to build it and complain about it later. And so he is 95% remote. But a lot of his work, right, he's in the business side. And so a lot of his work is just getting drawings into the system. So a lot of that data is there electronically. And so he can do the bulk of that work from home. And their company is trying to keep anyone who can do work from home because it is expensive to own buildings. And so we even see that here at the labs is a lot of our business, a lot of our scheduling, we prefer them to work at home, and there's definitely expectations around it, but there is a premium for a desk spot. And so seeing a little bit of more in person, but sometimes logistics kind of get in the way of that aspect a little bit. Personally, I prefer in-person work even when I come to the office and I'm on virtual meetings. And part of that's because my husband got the home office during COVID, since he does most of his work from home. So I didn't have as much of a dedicated spot for my flex times. And so for me, that ability to focus and to be able to do that, and kind of since post-COVID in general, whether working at home, I'm much more cognizant about keeping my calendar updated, even if it's like for a doctor appointment, showing I'm out of office for a period of time. Whereas previously, no one would care if I kind of left during the day and came back. But in the time of remote work, right, are people really working? So it's just being transparent about what your schedule is. And I've seen that trend very much stay, where calendars are probably a little more transparent than they have been in the past.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Mindy. Same question as Omar. For you personally, what has been some of the pros and some of the drawbacks of this virtual, hybrid, flexible schedule that you've experienced so far?
The pro is definitely flexibility, and not necessarily a con, but right, that diligence to make sure you're actually doing the work when you say you're going to be doing the work, getting online at the time you're going to be getting online. Having a dedicated space is definitely valuable, especially if you do more at home work than not. Dedicated, right? We made sure we got a KVM so we could have multiple monitors set up at home, so it was much easier to do a lot of the work we did. So I think it was just making sure your home environment was capable to do what you could do at work. Sometimes the downside of design software can run really slowly. So if I have to remotely log into like a SolidWorks or an ECAD database, sometimes from home it lags, and that's something that we still see. Go ahead, Mike.
Yep, Mr. Mike.
Yeah, a quick question. Working at home, I did some working at home after I retired as a contractor. Currently, if you work at home, can you take some tax breaks by yourself working at home? Claim your phone, claim your anything that you have to, expenses to work at home, the space, like you say, you have to set up the space. Maybe you have to use your own computer.
Our company actually paid for both my husband's equipment and my equipment, so I couldn't deduct it since they actually even provided us a desk and things like that. So
what about space?
Huh?
Space.
Space, yeah.
You can claim space if you designate,
Oh.
10 square feet of your house as a business,
Right.
as a work thing. Check into that. That may be
I'll look
something
into that.
that's tax deductible.
Part of that is also electricity use, wear and tear, and also
Oh yeah, our
water.
Wi-Fi bill.
Yeah.
That last day of the month, my husband's like, "Okay, kids, stop getting on Roblox now."
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mike. That's great insight. Yeah, taking advantage of some of that tax break and tax information that's useful, beneficial. Lourdes, I don't know if you are doing work from home or are flexible, but the same question to you. Do you see that flexible work or remote work is still something that is sustainable in 2025, or is there a slow shift back into the office happening for you?
So, my company is almost like a case by case basis because there's some people that have been with the company for like years and they like moved to another state and the company actually like pay to have their thing shipped to their house so they can like still work from home, but they've been with us for so long and they know so much about certain products that we can't afford to lose that. But there's like a ongoing battle between like work in the office versus be more flexible and work from home. I think right now like the company stance is 1 or 2 days flexible at home just because we are a manufacturing plant and you have to be on site for certain issues. But my manager, it's really cool if I'm ever traveling and I need to like work from home for like 5 days at like consecutive or something, or I'm on vacation, that's available as well. It's more of a conversation and like a heads up.
So here's where it gets kind of interesting. If you take PTO or a vacation, you're not necessarily supposed to be working. So is that necessarily something that you as an individual are saying, making accommodations, moving, I want to visit a certain state, location, abroad maybe. Is it possible that I can work remotely from that particular location a couple of days? And as I'm living there, taking quote unquote advantage of the nightlife or the amenities there after my working hours. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it'll be sometimes where I'm like, oh, I'm traveling somewhere and I'm definitely going to be busy for the whole week.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say I'm flying in Thursday, but I'm still working remotely on Friday.
Mm,
And then my vacation starts on Monday. That kind of flexibility.
okay, I
Yeah.
guess it's on a case by case basis with your manager and the rapport that you have with them, correct?
Correct. Yeah. But they're pretty flexible unless you kind of give them a reason to not trust you. And like Mindy said, your calendar has to reflect that pretty well. Like if you're virtual, working somewhere else, if you're busy, have meetings, all that stuff should be kind of reflected on your calendar so people know what you're doing and stuff.
Okay, great. Talking about the calendar, that's one of the tools. And talking about tools, what tools or practices have actually improved the productivity and or work-life balance during the last couple of years? I know that in the past we used to use a lot more telephone for conversation, and before COVID, Teams and Zoom were still very, very underutilized per se, right? And during COVID, Zoom spiked, Teams spiked. Anything that was visual, or even this meeting, is something that has stemmed out of that particular era. But I want to get your perspective. What tools, and this goes back to Lourdes, and then we'll go to Mindy, have you seen emerge and continue to improve productivity and or work-life balance at this moment? Lourdes?
I tend to use Teams a lot just to communicate simple messages, emails if it's important enough or I need to follow up eventually.
Yeah.
I use all of them, and I also just tend to schedule my things. There's certain things I need to block out so I can focus on something else and people don't bother me type of thing. Yeah.
Were you affected by COVID during your college, university years?
I was a student, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so you kind of went through that student phase with COVID. Okay, got it. Mindy, for you, same question. What tools and or practices have improved productivity and work-life balance over the last couple years?
I think you really hit on it with the Teams and Zoom. One of the greatest things I think about COVID is the classified network has drastically improved. The speed at which our documents get translated from unclassified to the high side have dramatically improved. I remember it would take a week to get a document from low side to high side, or try to go the opposite direction, take 2 weeks to get a document from the high side to the low side. But they really focused on efficiency of moving documents. And that we still see that, which is phenomenal. I can do a transfer and I can hop onto my other network and have my document that I need on the right network that I need.
Yeah,
We work a lot with a facility in Kansas City, so we still needed to have meetings, and so it was a lot easier to not just do it over teleconference, but actually be able to pull up documents for them to view that are on the classified network, so we can all see the same information. Which prior to COVID, man, they really did not invest in those systems, even though we needed to communicate with sites not in. So we were saving money by less travel. I mean, I kind of miss some of the traveling to an extent, but the need to have like, hey, let's meet with the mechanical engineering team at Kansas City to see how they're manufacturing that weld right now, and they can share images quickly with us. So huge benefits on that front. Just being able to have those tools upgraded that just were not touched was really beneficial from a flexibility and work life balance. I kind of said it earlier, right? I'm able to get my kids off to school easier. I don't have to plan to stay at work till like 7 o'clock at night. I can get in some of emails and other things that are less in work sensitive at home and still have that time with my family.
right. Okay, thank you for sharing that insight. Mr. Mike Cruz, what tools have you seen or practices which have improved the productivity and or work-life balance?
Okay, we're going to go back 25 years here.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, this was the beginning of teleconferencing.
Okay.
Before in the calibration program, we had 30 some labs we had to get together every so often, every 6 months or whatever, and then we had to get the policy and the procedure people, all that stuff. We had frequent meetings. It would have been nice to see what we have today, to be able to bring up documents that you can see and review, and everybody has access to them. They, and the concept of conference meetings. Everybody would have a conference room. Everybody would have a large screen, and everybody would log into that same system, and you'd be able to meetings virtually. This was at the beginning, and so the whole idea was to save money. So people don't have to travel across the United States every 6 months. And some of the meetings we had hundreds of people, lab managers from around the world for the Navy. So today's thing with Zoom and document sharing is would have been a big plus back then, which we didn't have the capability of doing. Somebody would have maybe a shot of a document, and it would be hard to see, but there was no access to editing it and reviewing it and adding on to it, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, and right now, our ship meetings are all on group chat.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't met in person for 3 years.
Yeah.
We do it all on the chat thing, or the group meeting, or whatever that thing is. And so I think it allowed more organizations to take advantage of that and communicate freely. I guess the only thing is access, and whoever is going to determine who can access the link at that time. That's probably one of the big issues. If you're not on that list, then you may not get into the meetings if you think you need it to be. Um, yeah, I think this is the current availability of computers and cell phones and links that allow you to do document sharing, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I think that's greatly improved. But let's go back to uh, these are all good if you can use them. So Mindy, I worked in a calibration facility, a standards laboratory, and if you got hardware, if you got people working on hardware, they can't work from home. It's hands on. It's a hands on thing. Some of the paperwork you might be able to mitigate, but and documentation. And we had procedure writers. Those people could probably work off site. But if you're tied to hardware, testing materials and whatever, the best that you can do is time. Share the time. Split the days or whatever. But you're still going to have to show up in the lab, 40 hours a week, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you, sir. Great insight, great perspective. So, there are some tools that have made things a little bit easier and more productive and create balance into our work life scenarios, right? But then there's still things that maybe you can't do virtually or you can't do remotely. So, you still have to go in person and be in person. But that's the nature of things. But there has been an advancement. And now there's also a lack of sometimes resources, as Mr. Mike Cruz alluded to, in regards to individuals controlling some of those links and who gets invited and who gets to participate in that. So that's something to also consider, right? But at the same time, if you have a meeting and it's broadcasted and it's something that's accessible to everybody, when you were in person, it was difficult to get into some of those secured spaces because you needed to one register in advance versus now having a link. You can just click on the link and you don't have to worry about going into a secure spot or anything like that because the person organizing can definitely take care of that on their end and make sure that that's secured and taken care of. So how moving on to the economies around our local areas. When COVID was taking place, a lot of businesses were declaring or closing down because brick and mortar was their main forte. So some of those businesses actually had to pivot, reinvent themselves, and go into a virtual format or some sort of hybrid format, where we also saw a lot of businesses shaped into having a remote work crew force from home. A lot of local businesses like coffee shops that were close to the office spaces might have seen some issues or concerns. And that was broadcasted through main social media, the news broadcasting, where some local owned individuals were closing down their business shop, their bakery shop, their deli shop because there was lack of people going into those businesses. I want to hear from your perspective, Mindy. You're somewhere in the central area of the nation. And did you notice any of that going on during COVID? And has that rebounded so far? Or is that still a concern in some of those areas? Mindy?
My favorite coffee shop is still closed. So
Okay.
I'm really sad because it was the closest one to the base that actually
Okay.
did fresh roasted beans on site. So now I have to go much further for better coffee. So that's my like sad one still.
Okay.
So definitely like near like our base here in Kirtland Air Force Base, saw a lot of restaurant closures and a lot of them didn't bounce back. We're starting to see more pop up again, but we definitely still see that impact of that physical aspect.
Hmm.
Some rebounding, but a lot of them didn't pop back up. A lot more chains now. I feel like everything's a chain now, not like a local owned business.
Wow. So a lot of the chain businesses like Starbucks, McDonald's, Jack in the Box are the ones that actually have been sustainable versus the locally owned business shops where they're owned by families and maybe they're one or two shops and they can't sustain for a very prolonged period of time. That's what you are still seeing in your area. Is that correct, Mindy?
Yeah, we're still seeing that quite a bit.
Oh, okay. It's been a couple of years. It's been like
I
3 or 4
know.
years since COVID kind of went and died in the social
Yeah.
media
I'd like to
aspect.
see more of the local businesses back, but I feel like all those chains really took advantage of that property,
Wow.
right? My old coffee shop, they like tore down something and put up a Dutch Bros, and I was like,
Oh, I
it's
see.
just sugar.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I may be still grumpy about it.
No, that's okay. And that's why we're having a discussion, right? It did have some repercussions and it did
Mhm.
shape and modified what we knew and where we're at this present moment. Lourdes, from your side, on your area, you're up in the Morro Bay area, somewhere in Central California, coastal area. Have you noticed? I mean, I don't know if you were there during the COVID, post-COVID, I mean, pre-COVID era. So have you seen or heard if the local economy was reshaped by this whole scenario and has it bounced back?
Okay, so I work in Paso Robles, which
Okay,
is like 30 minutes away from Morro Bay, and it's more inland. It's known for
okay,
the wine and
yeah,
stuff. It's really hot here.
okay,
But I work next to the airport and more on the industrial side,
okay,
but there's not many restaurants here because it's like a good 10, 15 minutes away from the main town, right?
okay.
It's still Paso Robles, but it's not like in downtown or anything. So there's like one restaurant at the airport that's obviously pretty busy, and I'm pretty sure it got busier post 2020 because there's always traffic from the airport, the firefighters, the police, and then also just like five companies that are around here. But
Hmm.
everything is more like you have to drive. Like if you want to go to a restaurant, it's like a good 10 minutes, or like even for a chain like Jack in the Box or anything, it's like a good 10 minutes or something. You have to get in your car and drive something. Yeah.
So you haven't, I mean, you don't really have that experience of whether the economy was heavily impacted in a negative way. It seems that it was heavily impacted in a positive way for that particular area just
Yeah.
because of the central location of that restaurant and
Yeah.
all
And
the
for
shops.
where I live, it's a beach town, so it's very heavily dependent on tourists. So that one you can see how it was affected, the local economy, and it's bouncing back slowly but surely. And you can kind of see how it's affecting the locals as well.
So do you live in Morro Bay or Paso Robles? Lourdes?
Sorry, what was the question?
Do you live in Morro Bay or do you live in Paso Robles?
I live in Morro Bay, but I work
Okay,
in
got it.
Paso Robles
Okay,
because I
got
like the coastal weather. I can't take this like 105 weather. It's not for me.
Okay, okay, got it. Mr. Mike Cruz, from your perspective, local South Chula Vista area, have you seen the economy, the local economy, be hit by the whole situation of post-COVID scenario? And have you seen it bounce back if it was affected?
You know, surprisingly, Chula Vista, even during COVID, I think businesses were fairly stable, even the small businesses, because I think the clientele is local and the city's been large enough
Mhm.
that. And I'm trying to remember back through COVID. We still did stuff, you know, but we all had our mask on. We still went to the restaurants and things like that. So I'm thinking COVID probably didn't affect Chula Vista that much. Maybe more San Diego because of the tourist industry. I mean,
Mm.
that was probably affected more. But I think the city itself and even San Diego proper, you probably had some closing, some smaller shops, but I would say 95% of businesses slowed down. But people were still, you have to think about this. People are still working and making money,
Yeah.
and people still wanted to spend money, and people still wanted to go out, but they knew that there were limitations. But we were still doing it on a cautionary basis. But I don't think I've seen, I'm out here at East Lake like you are, and I've seen this place just continually grow.
Yeah.
It just keeps expanding new things, new businesses. And I think very few businesses have not made it. The one Mexican restaurant turned into a Korean restaurant. Uh, but that's about it. But the business, even the small businesses around my area here, um, they may have slowed down, but and when you talk about closures and people losing their jobs and stuff like that, not so much, not so much. So I think I don't think we were not affected by COVID. I'm sure we were, but I didn't see any economically. I didn't see any major slowdown. Maybe some minor stuff, but nothing major.
Yeah.
I still
Economic.
had my ice cream shop, and I can still go get a burger, and and there's still a lot of places to go and do and see things.
Yeah, yeah. Economically, I think at least in the larger mid-sized cities, the impact was less felt. And echoing Mindy's comment, a lot of those chain entities definitely did not suffer too much. In fact, they actually benefited a little bit because they could pick up those businesses that were actually closing down. So that's actually making things a little bit interesting in the economic sense. So in that sense, economically, it did have an impact because, as Mindy indicated in the chat, the property cost did go up, making it hard for locals. So that makes sense, right? And if it's harder to afford land, it's harder to afford office space, and that's where we see a lot of those corporations that actually have funding and revenue somewhere streamlined from somewhere else. They can definitely continue staying afloat, staying open. So that makes sense. Mr. Mike Cruz, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah. So that brings to mind. I think the only ones that really suffered during COVID were office spaces.
Mm,
People started to work from home, and that was a big change in downtown San Diego. There was a lot of office spaces that went vacant, and I think they're still trying to recover. And again, according to this hybrid work schedule, some of the places may not recover. But I was just down. My wife goes to the dentist downtown San Diego. They're building like crazy.
yeah,
The apartments are going up. I mean, everywhere that they can put a multi-story building, they're doing it now, and so there's a lot of going on. And then we have our Gaylord hotel down there on the beachfront now. I
right.
mean, another 1,000 jobs or so. Some areas are expanding and growing, and which is why we're the United States. We're economically tied to expansion and growth, and we continue to see that. But yeah, I think office space is probably the biggest hit or the biggest uh, adversely affected by COVID.
Yeah.
I think Mindy, you're a government employee or contract,
Mindy.
Mindy.
Yeah, technically contractor. It's really weird, but we're federally funded,
Are you, are
but we're
you, are,
technically a
do you
contractor.
work for DOE?
We're a federally funded lab space is what we're considered. So it gets real weird. So we're not we're a contractor, not
Yeah,
a civilian employee.
right, right. You in Sandia?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, because we worked with the calibration people in San Diego for many years, so I'm kind of familiar with it. And they were contractor too, and yet we were all government workers, and we're the only ones
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's a real weird line. It's like a
Yeah.
combo of the two because we don't get the CAC card to get on base. We have to
Oh,
have it's because we're not like one or the other.
right, right. You're not one of them. Yeah,
Exactly. Yep.
I I got it. Yeah, yeah. So, and so like Mindy and I, when I was working, I was considered essential, and so and when COVID hit and all this other stuff, we would have still been working. And even like today, as our current administration closes down government offices and stuff, I work for Department of Defense under the Navy and considered essential. And so we would be the last to go. I mean, our work didn't change a bit,
Yeah.
and the work still had to be sustained. So we calibrated the Navy, and we collaborated with DOE, on calibration efforts, et cetera, et cetera. So COVID and the shutdown, if you're deep into the government as an essential worker, you're probably not going to get affected.
Yeah.
They may say, we're not going to give you a raise for the next 3 years, which they can do. And that has happened to me. But basically, your job is pretty much secure. But let's go back to Chula Vista. It's a town that's fairly solid. It doesn't rely heavily on tourism. People basically leave Chula Vista to go work someplace else.
Yeah.
Like yourself, you go up to North County, you work. But this is a bedroom community, and so people have jobs, they spend money, and they have and the new coffee shop down in Bonita's got a line coming out. The Mindy, you would have loved this, the brand new coffee shop, and they got people lined up down the street every day. I don't understand it, but businesses are doing well.
Yeah. Awesome.
Glad to hear that.
Sorry about your coffee shop there, Mindy.
I know I'm a coffee snob. I'll drink other coffee, but I am a coffee snob. Like I fresh roast my own beans, fresh grind my own beans. Like I like to take my time. I monitor my water temp.
Wow. Okay.
And there's like 2 places in Albuquerque that like really focus on their quality aspect, and that was one of them. They have another office, but it's further away from the site. But they had one close to the base, and that one shut down.
Okay.
With sad times. I'm still mourning that loss.
All right. Well, sorry about that. And
Well, I'm more productive. I don't do coffee runs anymore.
oh. Okay. Around the room, Lourdes, anything that you want to add about the whole working remote and or the economy being affected and or the tools that have actually stamped out or stood out from this post-pandemic era? Lourdes?
I think it's nice to see that the workplace are being more flexible because it benefits everybody as long as the work is getting done. Like people should have the flexibility and the choice rather than being forced to come back into the office. I think everything's different post COVID. And I
Yeah.
think some workspaces are having a really hard time like accepting that and accepting that as the new norm.
Yeah. Thank you, Lourdes. Mindy, any thoughts? Post-COVID era, working from home, remote work, hybrid work, tools that have come out, stood out, developed, and or the economy is being affected.
Just be willing to adapt. You never know kind of what's going to happen. People are always so surprised. Like we're actually going to go through layoffs at Sandia, but our entire department is like, we have so much work, we can't keep up. But just be willing to adapt and be cognizant of who you decide to work for. There's pros of instead of doing a huge layoff, we're going to do maybe a 1% that's likely going to be all voluntary or kind of give retirement packages. And not all companies try to operate that way because we did our hiring freeze about 3 years back. And preparation of knowing this was coming and watching the trends. And so you can't always say exactly where you're going to work, but you can try to look at the type of companies you're going to work for and what do they do for their people and what do their people say about those companies can really help get you set up in a spot where you feel like you have a little more job security, or they know like we're trying to replace, so like where we are affected in terms of layoffs is basically anything climate change oriented. And so we're trying to bring all those electrical engineers over to like our nuclear deterrence space. And so we're trying to, because we expect that to come back because it's not going away, but we need to hold those employees. So where can we fit them short term to retain that talent, retain those skills, even if it's not a perfect fit in other spaces? So be cognizant of where you try to go and be willing to adapt and go with the punches. I've been a code monkey before where it's like, let me translate MATLAB to C++ because I know how to do it, just to kind of keep that skills. And now I understand more and I can learn more now.
Awesome. Thank you, Mindy. Great insight. Mr. Mike Cruz, any final thoughts, comments?
Yeah, Mindy, you just trigger a lot of thoughts. I have to go back, but yeah, in the current time that the whole United States is readjusting its workforce. And I think that's an interesting point that you bring up, because companies are trying to hold on to assets that they're probably going to need in the future, because things are not going away, but definitely being affected currently with the either slowdown or redirection. And even a lot of government jobs that are not essential, they're getting changed and challenged. But the tasking is not going away. I mean, if you're a forest ranger, the forest is still there, and you're still going to have to do that work. But in the short run, you may be redirected or lose your job or whatever. But those things are still essential for the country to run well. And I think our nation is going to be looking at itself in the next 3 to 5 years as I think there's going to be a rejuvenation going on. Right now, it's burn, slash and burn, and but that doesn't really cure anything. It'll delay what we're doing currently, but we'll have to come back and rejuvenate ourselves. So many that was a very opening thought in my mind. Is many companies are going to have to readjust now. How do you save resources? How do you redistribute resources? And then how do you come back? Because there will be a time that we will be coming back.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mike Cruz. Great insight, great perspective. Yeah, so this whole conversation is trying to get a handle on how do we see remote work? Is it working? Is it here to stay? And as we have alluded to, and I believe, Lourdes, you alluded to it, some companies are a little bit resistant. A lot of other companies are embracing this flexible change and flexible work and are being more cognizant of their workforce, right? We are seeing a lot of graduating students that actually lived through that COVID era, and in their mindset, that's the way that flexible work should continue to move forward. So I think this is going to be something that we'll see for a longer period of time. But to Mr. Mike Cruz's point, there might be a rejuvenation period, and we might see it in a couple of years. I don't know what it'll look like, but eventually we'll definitely continue moving forward. And one step in front of the other is the way we got to do it. So with that, I hope this whole conversation brought some awareness and some thoughts and insights and provoked some questions and answers for everybody. So with that, thank you so much for joining Cafecito Chats. We'll see you next Wednesday. Hasta luego.
Bye, Mandy, Loris,
Bye.
Lázaro.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.